First of all, tell us a bit about Form 306.
Well, Form 306 is the police term for a contact receipt. So it's a form that will be given out starting in July by the Toronto police personnel to anybody that's carded. And, carding is obviously an issue. Folks should know about it, but carding is a significant issue in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And this is the measure that has been proposed by the community, by police, by the Police Services Board, as a way of keeping the police accountable.
And how is the police justifying the introduction of Form 306? How do they think it will help them better serve the community without any racial elements?
Well, to be honest with you, the Toronto police weren't the ones that came up with the idea of contact receipts. It was different community organizations and people from the community that were pushing the Toronto Police Services Board, who's in charge of the Toronto Police Service, to implement an accountability measure as a way to evaluate what the police are doing, because, the Toronto Star series, known to police, is the one that exposed, which is a very significant series. It's what exposed the whole practice of racial profiling. So the Toronto Star made the argument that the way the police are carding people in the community is a form of racial profiling just based on the numbers. There was an overrepresentation of black and brown men that were being carded. So the police, to answer your question, the police have resisted actually being checked on carding, having a contact receipt. They're fully for carding. It's because of the struggles of community members that actually pushed to have this measure put in place. And it seems like it's going to happen in July.
Okay, and as you mentioned, there were organizations towards this Form 306.
Right.
Who were these organizations or individuals?
My understanding is it was actually John Sewell. He used to be a former mayor of Toronto, and he's part of the Toronto Police Accountability Coalition that actually put forth that recommendation early last year, and they've been struggling around this. Just to be clear, the Justice is Not Colorblind campaign has always been consistent that we're actually against the whole practice of carding. We've been clear about that. But the Toronto Police Services Board and the subcommittee that they created for this issue has decided that it's unrealistic to stop the practice of carding. So we've faced this reality now as JINCB, the Justice and Not Colorblind campaign, and we put forward a number of proposals to try to deal with the fact that they're going to be starting carding for the police. We're trying to counteract racial profiling. So.
Okay, and have there been any movements or organizations against Form 306?
We're one of them. And there's been some other organizations, but to be honest with you, we were the ones that were the first. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but we were the first ones that actually said this is a wrong practice, and people have come later on, and that's great. That's a great thing. People have now are catching on to our message. And, like the Law Union of Ontario, just there's different groups that we actually have relationships with that get our message. And we're trying to collaborate and work together with these groups. The Network for Pan-African Solidarity, they've been pretty clear about they're against the whole practice as well. So there's been some other groups to share.
Okay. Yeah. And so what are some downfalls of the Form 306?
Well, there's still going to be carding.
Okay.
So Form 306 is a way for them just to evaluate this practice. So now, because on the information, you'll be able to get a receipt and it will show black, brown, whatever. So it checks off whatever you are. And you'll be able to see, they've got this many black people or this many brown people they've carded. We can see it on paper because you're getting a receipt when you get stopped.
Yeah, but don't you think it will monitor the police and have them resist the practice of just checking up on black or brown people?
That's the theory. But I don't think this will change it, to be quite honest with you. I don't think this will stop racial profiling. I think, I hate to be so pessimistic, but I think the police will continue to do it. I mean, in theory, if they have to think about giving a receipt, you think they would think, okay, I'm not going to stop this guy because of his color. I need to find a real reason to stop him. But I'm a bit pessimistic just because of the history of the Toronto Police Service and the Black community, which goes even before I was even born. I mean, it's a pretty bad history between the police and racialized peoples in the city.
But don't you think we'll at least have it on records and in written who was stopped and what was the ethnic background and why they were stopped?
Sure. And I think that in conjunction with education, a re-education of Toronto police personnel, is what will make this practice effective. So you can't just implement the practice because they're going to continue their same behavior. It's about re-educating the police to change their behavior. So if they do want to card folks, and since the Police Services Board thinks it's unrealistic to stop, they will actually card based on actual legitimate criminal matters and not non-criminal encounters, which is what carding is, right? And to answer your question, it will be effective if you re-educate the Toronto police, and that's what we've actually advocated now. A total re-education, and especially in particular of Black police, and teaching non-Black police officers and also white police officers to teach them how to deal with the African Canadian community in particular, because we've seen there's a particular relations between the police and the African Canadian community, teaching them, re-educating them, and getting them to understand that occupying the African Canadian community, which is in essence what they're doing, is not good and it needs to stop. Yeah. So education is key. Re-educate the police officers, and that's the main point, I think.
So what sort of information becomes available through Form 306?
There's basically it's going to be a carbon copy of Form 208, which is the actual carding, and it's quite detailed. On the Form 208, Form 208 asks you if your parents are divorced, are you in school or not, your immigration status, your race is on there. So my understanding is Form 306 will actually, it has to be a carbon copy of the information I just told you. And there's so many more other questions. This is a pretty extensive form, and I believe you can go to the Toronto Police website and see how it looks.
So why do you think that when the accused or the person who stopped sort of provides so much information, why do you think that it's not going to work to help other organizations or the head offices of the police kind of monitor what police officers are actually doing or what kind of people they're stopping? Right.
I do think it will help. It will help folks keep the police more accountable. But the main point is to stop the police from racial profiling. Okay. That's the point. Like, we're trying to get them to stop racial profiling because it's unconstitutional. It's against Canadian values to do that. You can't do that in Canada, right? Supposedly. So we've always been consistent, and other groups as well. Let's stop the root problem, which is racial profiling. If we're just trying to get contact receipts, they're still going to be racially profiling. That's why you need to re-educate the police period. We need fundamental change to the policing and the way it's done. So I'm not knocking the 306. I know the community has struggled hard for it, but we have to push now. This is just one recommendation. There's so many others. We need radical change of the police. They need to be re-educated, and so they can relate to racialized communities and African Canadian community in particular in a better way. But everybody wants to live in a safe city, and but everyone wants to be safe from the police abusing their power as well.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So roughly, what is the percentage or ratio of Black or brown accused in Toronto?
Okay, just to clarify, in the carding, they're not even accused. Like, that particular term accused is like if you're actually charged, then you're an accused person. Yeah. Just to clarify that. Okay, yeah. But most of the encounters that the police have, which are in the hundreds of thousands, 6 figures every year, I think it's over 500,000, something like that. Don't quote me on that. Our Form 208s are given out. Most of those are non-criminal encounters. So, I mean, I've said this before. If you're riding your bike, you're with a group of friends walking down the road, you're in a car, that's when you get carded. Carding doesn't come in criminal matters. Most of the carding is non-criminal. So you're just approached by the police. Hey, you got IDs? And they get all of that information down. So black and brown men, even in areas of the city where black and brown people don't live, they're still overrepresented in the carding statistics. So my understanding is the amount of cards that have been given out to black and brown folks actually supersedes. Actually, it's not brown. It's the statistics for black men, actually. The amount of cards that have been given out to black men supersedes the amount of black people that are in Toronto. So that means people are being carded multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the statistic. I think it's 3.5 for African and Canadian men as the overrepresentation, and brown men as well. I'm not sure of this particular statistic for brown men, but those are the two most groups, black and brown men, that are...
Okay.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, what is the impact of such partial treatment on black or brown communities?
It's a negative impact. I work with youth on a regular basis, high school age youth. It's a negative impact. It actually shapes their identity of themselves. And the stories that I've heard from these young men are... No teenager should have to go through that type of constant surveillance that a lot of young people in the city are being subject to. And it really shapes negative self-concepts. And the thing with that is negative self-concepts lead to fulfilling negative stereotypes. And it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we're trying to change, we want positive impact on our youth, and we have to change the way the police relate to the community. And we have to change the power imbalance that's going on. Ultimately, that's at the root of this. It's a power imbalance between oppressed communities and, in this particular instance, the police state. It's that power imbalance that causes discrimination. As Jagmeet Singh says, who's a politician, an MPP he's definitely an ally of ours. He actually said that on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. I was actually there, and I thought that was a very powerful statement. So I'm using it today.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. That's ultimately the root cause. It's a power imbalance, and we have to build capacity of oppressed people, and make people have to make their lives better, but we have to provide supports as organizers and organizations to people that are struggling. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing. I'm working with youth right now. And the Justice is Not Colorblind campaign is working with youth around these issues. Yeah.
And in terms of racial profiling, with all the efforts and pressure being put on the police from anti-oppressive groups, has there been any visible changes or results?
I guess in a sense you can say the Form 306 is a positive victory, short-term victory by the community and outcome. That's an outcome that's been achieved. We need more. What we're pushing for is long-term outcomes, which will take, who knows how long that will take.
Yeah.
We want fundamental change to the way we relate, but victories like the 306, sure, we'll take that and say that's a good victory, good outcome, good change.
Okay.
But we're going to continue to put pressure on the police using various means to get them to change their behavior.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Odion, what can we as a society do to better our police services and eliminate racial profiling?
The best way people need to understand the power that they have. I think people underestimate the power that they have. So the power of communication, the work you're doing as a reporter, stuff like that. We have to be more involved in civil society. So if you're passionate about something, get involved. I think folks think that you have to be at a certain level in your life to be able to have an impact on things. And, the way we started was we were just concerned people about an issue. And we were like, we don't want this to happen. We just got together and started organizing. It's getting involved in civil society and being engaging and educating yourself and being self-aware and being aware of what's going on in society. These things are very important. And now you build confidence, and you actually get out there, and people are calling you and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And all of a sudden, you feel like you're having a positive impact. You're trying to actually change the world, which